Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do a Friday Reads video where I wrap up the week in reading and talk about exciting book things that have happened during the week. This was a big week for books. We'll talk about that. I also finished 3 books this week and I am about to start 2 others. We'll talk about that when we get to the actual Friday Reads portion of the video. If you would prefer to skip the chatty portion in the beginning where we talk about all that big book stuff that happened this week, you can skip to the Friday Reads by using the timestamp that will be in the description box down below. Now, the reason that this was a big week for books is both personal and related to book prize stuff. Because, of course, we got the finalists for the National Book Award for fiction. I did a whole video about it, and I will link that down below if you haven't seen it yet. But more importantly, I got to go to Portland. I got to go to Powell's. All of that was really exciting. We will talk about that in a moment. Before we do that, just some general book prize stuff. I won't talk a whole lot about the National Book Award because I already did my reaction video to the fiction list. I still have not had time to look at the other lists yet. Once we got home from Portland, just bedlam. It's been so busy trying to get caught up with work and, getting Teddy resettled and all of that stuff. So I haven't had a chance to look at the rest of the lists. Hopefully, before they announce who the winner will be, I will have finally done that. We'll see how that goes. But next week is also going to be huge for book prizes. I have my little cheat sheet in front of me with all of my book prize dates for the rest of the year. So the first book prize event that is happening next week is that the Giller Prize will be announcing its shortlist on October 9th. Now, I had thrown out the possibility that I would do specific, dedicated reaction videos to the Giller Prize. There was an amount of excitement for that possibility. I don't know about enough to justify the sort of time that it would take, but I could potentially still be willing to try it at some point. The problem is that this is going to be a very busy week. I already have 2 videos kind of planned, and one of them, there's a book award thing happening next week that I can't ignore that will be happening later in the week. And the other thing, I could kind of move it and push it back. It's Joel and I are planning to film our reading wrap up for September, but I could push that back and do the Giller Prize instead, but I really also kind of want to wrap up September. I don't like to make that wait too long after the month ends. And also, there's just exciting stuff to talk about. I will talk to you about all of this exciting Portland stuff that happened this past week, but Joel has a lot of exciting stuff to talk about with that as well, so I want to give him an opportunity to do that. So I think the Giller is going to take a backseat. There's also a lot of controversy around the Giller. We don't have to get into it. You can look it up if you would like to get into that. So I figure this year I'm going to table the Giller Prize, and maybe I'll talk about it in my next Friday Reads video, and we can talk about it then. Teddy just got home from an adventure with Joel, and I don't know if you can see him. Teddy! Oh, you get to see him disappear. Oh, here he is. Hi, baby. Did you have fun? Oh, he's a good boy. There you get to see his tail. So, anyway, and look who else is here. Just got home, so there you go. You'll see a lot more of Joel when we film our September reading wrap-up. Hopefully this weekend. Oh, somebody's ready for a playtime.
It's Friday. Let's go play ball.
Yeah. So there's your little Teddy fix. He was so happy to have us home, but he was a very good boy.
He was.
He was. So
see everybody next week.
So long story short, I think the Giller Prize is going to take a bit of a backseat. I'm going to table it and maybe I'll revisit it next year. Maybe I'll do a winter reaction. More likely I will just wrap the Giller shortlist into next week's Friday Reads, and we'll see how that goes. The big book prize thing that's happening next week, the one that I really can't ignore, is that the Nobel Prize for Literature is announced or scheduled to announce the 2024 laureate for fiction on Thursday. And I do a reaction video to that prize every year because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment. People get very upset when you have conversations about Nobel laureates. That's something I've learned every year, and yet I keep doing it because I think there are a lot of conversations worth having around the Nobel Prize. It's supposed to be a global prize, and in practice, it is a very European and North American prize. And usually when they venture outside of those areas, they recognize an author who is pretty inherently connected to either Europe or North America. And, they still are recognizing good authors. Like I read a book by Jan Fosse after he won last year. I'll link last year's reaction video down below. And it was a good book. I can't really fault the win. Annie Ernaux, the year before that, I read a book by her and loved it. So I can't fault the win, but they said they were going to be a global prize and they're not really being a global prize, which is a bit of a problem. And because people don't like having conversations like that, it's a little controversial. And, anyway, we don't have to get into the Nobel Prize and all of the ins and outs. We will have plenty of time to do that next week. It's scheduled for Thursday. If they hold to the schedule, I will try to do a reaction video on that day. So that is really exciting and will be coming on Thursday of next week. And then the Kirkus Prize will be announced October 16th. I'm not going to do a dedicated video for that one, but it's something that I pay attention to and look out for. So that is coming rapidly as well. And then we'll sort of get a break until November in the world of book prizes. But I definitely wanted to highlight that all of that stuff is coming. Now, the big book thing that happened on a personal level is that Joel and I went to Portland this week, which was a lot of fun. I've never been to Portland, or had never been to Portland, neither Portland, Maine, nor Portland, Oregon. And now I can say I've been to Portland, Oregon. And of course, we went to Powell's. So I waffled back and forth about whether or not I wanted a t-shirt or this lovely zip-up hoodie that I ended up getting. And ultimately, I settled on the hoodie because I already have a lot of bookstore t-shirts. I'm wearing Montana Book Company today because they are my favorite independent bookstore. And Chelsea from Montana Book Company was extremely helpful to Joel and I over the week. So I'm honoring Montana Book Company and honoring Powell's with my wardrobe for this week. But if you follow along, you probably know I love the zip-up hoodie that I got from Tattered Cover when Joel and I went there. And before anybody comments, yes, I know Tattered Cover was purchased by Barnes & Noble this year, and therefore they are technically not an independent bookstore anymore. At the time they were. People get very literal on the internet, so I feel like I have to clarify. But anyway, I love that hoodie. So now I will have another bookstore hoodie that I can sort of add into the rotation, and that will be very fun. It's also it's on the large side, which I find very cozy, and it's kind of warm, and that's lovely. And it's just great. So we went to Powell's on Saturday. Joel had kept telling me, and a lot of people have told me over the years, that when you go to Powell's, you really need to spend a whole day there. And I was kind of thinking, sure, maybe we'll spend an hour, maybe we'll spend 2. I don't think I need a whole day in a bookstore. Like, even I, as excited as I get about bookstores, don't think I'm going to need a whole day in a bookstore. Well, we spent the whole day in the bookstore. We really did. We spent at least 4 hours in Powell's on Saturday, and it was lovely. I did a short video about the experience where I walked around, and I will link it down below if you haven't seen it and would like to check it out, because it is a hard store to explain because it is huge. Now, they had a map, and I don't know where I put my map. It's around the house somewhere. We have like a chaos of documents and things that we brought back with us, and it's somewhere mixed in there. And I couldn't find it for this because I was going to show you the layout of the store. It is huge. It's really huge. And when you walk in, there's like a big area with sidelines, staff picks, some used books, new books, a very large cash wrap area. And then you go into different rooms, and they're color coded. And I knew that going in, but even with the map and even knowing that the rooms were color coded, I still got lost wandering around. And finally I ran into Joel at some point because we went separate ways, and then I ran into him again, and I was like, I can't find the fiction section, and he had been there, so he was able to show me where it was. Very helpful. The fiction section is huge, and I love they mix new books and old books on the shelves because they have used books and new books, and oh my gosh, it was delightful. Actually, I pulled some stuff that I was going to show you, and I didn't grab one of the things that I found most exciting, so I'm going to go to my pile. I have a pile of things that I brought back from Portland. There's your sneak peek of that. My book haul for October is going to be insane. So I will show you some of the things that I brought back, not just from Powell's, but in general, but I want to grab one more. So I am not ashamed to say that of the 4 hours we were in Powell's, I think I maybe spent the first hour just kind of wandering around aimlessly. And then I spent the bulk of the rest of the time that we were in the store just walking the fiction section because it has row upon row upon row on one half of the room and then row upon row upon row on the other half of the room. And as I was walking around, you probably know me. You know that I'm a Pulitzer Prize for Fiction super fan, and that I loved Now in November by Josephine Johnson. Well, they had The Dark Traveler, a novel by Josephine Johnson. Now, this is one of her later books. Her later works are a little up and down. They can have a bit of mixed reviews, especially her fiction. The Inland Island, oh my gosh, fantastic. That's a nonfiction book that I really love. Now in November, the book that she won the Pulitzer Prize for, was her debut. So this is one of her later books. I don't even really know if there are good reviews of it or not. The thing that is so exciting about it to me is that it's signed. So I now have a signed copy of a Josephine Johnson book. And I'll talk more about that one in my book haul, but I just really, as I've been talking about this and getting excited, had to talk about it. Editing Greg is jumping in because I forgot to mention something about that. So obviously I found the Josephine Johnson book, and later on Joel joined me in the fiction section. We were talking about it, and somebody recognized me. And the really funny thing about that is that apparently she heard my voice and said, I feel like I know that person, but it can't be it. And then she realized I was talking about the Pulitzer Prize and said, oh, it has to be him, and came and said hello. So, hi, Christy. That was so fun. And I got to talk about Pulitzer Prizes. She is also doing a Pulitzer Prize project. So we talked about favorites so far, least favorites so far, and things we're looking forward to. It was a blast. So there's no reason that she would be watching this particular video. But hi, Christy. I had so much fun talking to you. Thank you for talking Pulitzer and indulging in my nonsense with me. And then on our last day in Portland, there was only a half day at the conference that we were there to attend. So we hadn't gotten this jigsaw puzzle. Now, if you know Joel and I, we love to do jigsaw puzzles. We are like puzz fanatics, and it's just something we love to do, especially when the weather starts to get cold and we're heading into colder weather time. So we had talked about this puzzle, and then I got excited about things, and I decided to use the money that we would have spent on the puzzle for the hoodie. And then over the next few days, we kind of regretted not getting the puzzle. So we were going back to get the puzzle. Now, there you can kind of see the entrance, or the main entrance to the store, and how large that is. And then along the side, I think over here off camera, is where the fiction section is. And you can't see it, but it's just gigantic. So this will be fun to do. So we went back, and right before we went, thankfully, I checked my email, and I saw that someone who subscribes to my channel named Stacy had emailed me a gift card to Powell's, and what a lovely thing. Thank you, Stacy. So when we went back for the puzzle, I also picked up a copy of The Mighty Red by Louise Erdrich. So thank you, Stacy. What a thoughtful gift. And because of it, I picked up this book, which I really wanted to get at some point anyway, because I love Louise Erdrich. I have collected all of her books, and I'll talk more about this one in my book haul as well. But I just wanted to shout that out because thank you, Stacy. What a kind and wonderful thing to do. So we got that puzzle, and we got that. And what a great store. It's huge. It's overwhelming. Like, I admit, if I lived in Portland, I would probably go to a smaller store on a regular basis, but what an incredible bookstore experience. And it is a great bookstore. They have wonderful selection. I did go to the rare book room. It was overwhelming at that point. I really was like overwhelmed walking around Powell's. It was an intense, almost like a religious experience, I imagine. Just great. And if you have been there, you know. If you haven't been there, it's worth the wait. It's worth the hype, because I have been wanting to go to Powell's for a really long time. I do actually have a Powell's t-shirt because a friend of mine went to Powell's years ago, and he got a t-shirt for me because I had never been there. So that was another one of my justifications for doing the hoodie instead of a t-shirt. I already have a t-shirt, but now I have a hoodie as well. So what a great experience. The rare book room is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But my favorite was actually the fiction section, I have to admit, because there's a mix of, again, used books and new books. And they just have such a great selection, like things that you really can't find in a lot of other stores. I mean, admittedly, they have the money to bring a lot of stuff in, and they certainly have the space that you don't find. So I walked through and I found like a room at the top, which I watched the film adaptation of that earlier this year. They actually had books by Josephine Johnson. I got another one as well, but I'll make you wait until the book haul for October. That's cruel because it's the beginning of October and I don't do book hauls until the end of the month. So you're going to have to wait. But just incredible selection. And you can find things that you wouldn't find anywhere else, which is pretty cool. So we were actually in Portland to attend the Pacific Northwest Booksellers Association conference. And we were invited by Chelsea from Montana Book Company because we're friends of hers. We love Montana Book Company. If you follow the channel, you know we love Montana Book Company. It's a great store. So she goes every year. She's on a committee with them, and she invited us to tag along. And as, bookish people, we couldn't say no. And it was just really great to be around book people. I ran into someone I used to work with when I was at Macmillan. Not directly, like sort of tangentially. And but it was just so cool because most of the people that I knew when I worked at Macmillan aren't there anymore. And most of them aren't even working in publishing anymore. I'm not working in publishing anymore. So it was just so funny to run into her. And it was a lot of fun for that reason. But it's just great to be around book people who love books, who get excited about upcoming books, and have conversations with people about what's coming out, what's going to be great, and conversations with bookstore people, because bookstore people are also the best. Library people are also the best, but, tomato, tomato. So it was just a lot of fun. And of course, because it was a book conference, there were a lot of freebies, hence the massive pile over there that I'm going to have to figure out where to put everything. I might have to take out some of my face outs in my bookshelf, and I'm just excited about all of them. And I can't wait to talk to you about a lot of the books that I got. I did pick out 2 exciting ones as a sort of tease for the book haul that will be coming later this month. One of them is actually releasing next week, and I had been thinking about reading it because I actually have access to the eGalley on NetGalley. This is what I had been planning to read on the plane, and then I didn't read it on the plane because I did an audiobook instead, and we'll talk about that when we do the Friday Reads portion. So here is Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst. I have been on a bit of a roller coaster with him. I read The Line of Beauty and liked it. I read The Sparsholt Affair and really didn't like it. I don't even think I finished The Sparsholt Affair, if I'm being honest. And because I had one I liked and one I didn't like, I've kind of held off. But this one sounds really amazing. It is very long. And when I saw that there was an advanced reader's copy of it there, I wasn't going to pass that up because I already have this weird bias against reading things on my phone or on a tablet or whatever. I don't like to do it. And in eGalley, sometimes the font is a little smaller. So I figured save my eyes and I can get this. So this is coming out next week. If you're watching this when this video is posted, it comes out October 8th, 2024. And I'm really excited about that. So I managed to snag a copy of it, and I'm going to save my eyes because this looks a lot easier to read than the eGalley did. And then, so that's one book that's coming out immediately. How about a book that's coming out next year? Now, I've never read an A.O. Ivy book, but Chelsea from Montana Book Company has read this one and loved it. And I have heard really good things about The Snow Child, which is a Pulitzer Prize finalist. So I'm really excited to get to this. I'm really excited to get to The Snow Child. I have actually already been on a hold list for the audio of The Snow Child for 2 months at this point, and I'm still waiting. So excited to read this. And one of the things that's really fun about this is that it's signed. Eowyn Ivey was at one of the dinners at the conference and spoke about the book and the inspiration behind it. It's kind of inspired by Beauty and the Beast, and also inspired by some things from her childhood. It sounds really interesting. I will talk a lot more about this when I do my book haul for the month of October, and I will have links to all of these books, including The Mighty Red, and all of the books that I actually read this week in the description box down below. Now, of course, if you jump on Our Evenings before Tuesday, it will be a pre-order And this one obviously will be a pre-order for months because the book doesn't come out until February 11th, 2025. But I will have links to them in the description box down below. Those are, of course, affiliate links to bookshop.org. So if you use those, it gives me a tiny little bit of a kickback. But, am so excited to talk about all of the things. It was just fun to be around book people because, again, book people are the best. With that, because we're kind of getting a little long on time, let's pivot to the Friday Reads portion of the video. As I said, I finished 3 books this week, and I have kind of been slow on audio. So the book that I did do on audio was Eric LaRocca's The Trees Grew Because I Bled There. This is a horror story collection, and I wanted to try to do something a little bit different because I always think it's important to sort of get outside of your comfort zone, read something that you wouldn't ordinarily read. And I don't read a lot of horror at all. And this was actually recommended by Chelsea from Montana Book Company about a year ago at this point. And she said that she's not a horror person, but she really got into Eric LaRocca, and this was her favorite of the ones that she had read. So we got it, and I read it. And the important thing is that I tried something new at the end of the day. Did I enjoy it? No. I think it's not the avenue for me. I thought, a collection of kind of queer-coded or like queer-inspired horror stories would be the path. Turns out it's not. And so I finished it. I would say it wasn't for me. However, I could see why Chelsea liked it. I can see why a lot of people have been liking Eric LaRocca. It's just the difficulty when you try a genre that you don't usually do is that you have to find an access point, something that will sort of get you interested and will act as a sort of bridge to get you from where you usually read to there. And I thought the fact that Eric LaRocca writes very sort of queer horror stories would be that bridge, but ultimately it was not. So it's not that it's a bad book. It's just not the right horror book for me. And I would have to keep sort of trying to see if I can find one that would be right for me. And again, the important thing is that I tried. So I did this on audio, and I fully admit I sped up the audio. I usually only will listen at about 1.2 unless the narrator is talking very slowly. I sped it up a fair amount, and I was almost done by the time we got off of the plane. And then I skimmed pretty hard through the last few stories of it. Just because at that point I could tell, like, it's not that this is a bad book, but this is not a book for me. So I admit I kind of skimmed the ending, but So ultimately, I think what I'm saying is I am probably going to trade this book in at my local used bookstore, but don't take that to mean that this is a bad book. It's just not a book for me. But I tried, and that's the important thing. Now, I had mentioned that I was not planning to bring a book with me. That's why I listened to an audio on the plane on the way over. And I just knew that I was going to be picking books up while we were in Portland, if not at Powell's, then at the book conference. And I decided on the way back to read one of the books that we picked up. So this is not released yet. This is going to be coming out November 19th of 2024. So if you look at this one in the links, the affiliate links that will be down below, this would also be a pre-order link for now. And I forgot to grab my copy of Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These, but it is sort of a tie-in to this. So it comes from the same publisher as Claire, like Small Things Like These in the US, Grove. And since they don't have a Claire Keegan tiny book, they're sort of leaning into Brightly Shining. Now, the other thing to mention is that this was something that a rep from one of the publisher for that covers Grove talked about, and even they didn't pronounce the name of the author. They said the name of the book. This is translated, by the way, and the name of the translator is not on the cover. It's translated from the Norwegian by Caroline Waite. Now, I did look online before I started filming to try to figure out how to pronounce this name, because I try to make the time to do that before I film a video, because it's not, it's one thing that I only speak English, but it's kind of disrespectful, I think, not to try to do it correctly. So I looked it up, and I didn't see any guide to pronunciation. And I saw a video that involved this, and they did the same thing. They did not pronounce the name. They just talked about this book, Brightly Shining. And the interviews that I saw are in Norwegian. And when they jump in and immediately have like a long sentence, it's hard as an only English speaker to try to parse out, like, did they pronounce her name in there? What did it sound like? So long story short, I failed at trying to figure out how to pronounce this. If you know how to pronounce this author's name, please let me know. Maybe spell it out phonetically or however in the comment section down below, because I want to know. I feel like I will be talking about this book further as we get into the holiday season. Obviously, this is kind of a holiday book, but I think this is a holiday book in the same way that Small Things Like These is a holiday book. It's a very unsentimental story. In fact, it's kind of critical of humanity in some ways that happens to be set at Christmas. And the publisher rep for this was trying to downplay the comparisons to Small Things Like These, because he said he sort of thinks the general cover design and the fact that it is a Christmas book that's not really a Christmas book are where the comparisons to Small Things Like These begin and end. I would actually say it's a pretty good comparison to Small Things Like These, because again, it's sort of unsentimental. It has a story about humanity and what it is to be human, and morality and ethics at its center. And that, to me, is very Small Things Like These. So basically, you have the story of two sisters. One is named Ronja and the other is Melissa. And Ronja is sort of the center of the story. She's 10. Melissa is 16. They don't have a mother. It's never really explained where their mother is or what happened to her. And their father is extremely unreliable. And for that reason, the sisters have sort of learned not to rely on him. And Melissa, in particular, as the oldest of the two, tries to pick up some of the slack for what he does. Ronja finds a listing for a temporary, like, seasonal job selling Christmas trees in a Christmas tree market near their home. And basically, she convinces her father to apply for the job. He gets the job, and things are good at first. He's making money, he's buying stuff for them, and then quickly, in the way that things do, things start to backslide. He stops showing up at work, and Melissa, as older kids do in these situations, has to step up in order to take care of herself and in order to take care of her sister. And she sort of takes her father's place at the Christmas tree farm. And Ronja sort of tags along with her, and it's a very short book. I read it and finished it on the plane, and it's like an hour and a half plane ride from Missoula to Portland. It is 182 pages, and not only is it 182 pages, some of the pages or chapters are really short. It's a great book. Basically, in telling this story of the sisters trying to survive Christmas and to make money, and Melissa sort of stepping in for her father, it's about people living on the margins and people who are going through difficult times, hard times, and not being noticed, being sort of overlooked by people who are going about their lives and just not paying attention, not helping. And it's about the cruelties that they experience from people who do notice them, and sometimes the good things that come from other people who notice them and the difficulties that they are having. And for that reason, I would definitely recommend this. If you are someone who's not into like sentimental Christmas books, but you did like Small Things Like These, because that is not a sentimental Christmas book, this would actually be a really great book for you to read, because it is very Christmas in the way that it's the Christmas season. The characters work in a Christmas tree market and sell Christmas decorations to people, but it's not Christmassy in the way of like sentiment or sort of cheesiness or sappiness or anything like that. If you are someone who loves It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas time, this would be a great book for you as well, because It's a Wonderful Life, classic Christmas movie, but it's actually very serious and covers a lot of very heavy subject matter in it. So I enjoyed Brightly Shining. I read it in less than a day, because I think I did have about 20 pages left when we got home, and I finished the last 20 pages in bed before we went to sleep that night. So really successful book. I'll talk more about this in my monthly wrap-up and when I do my book haul. But I read this one. This is one that I got for free. This is an advanced reader's copy, but it's also a beautiful cover of the book. Coming November 19th, 2024, and definitely would recommend that one because I thought it was pretty great. So I had been reading Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle in my last Friday Reads video. And I had said that I was going to try to finish it before we left, and that if I didn't finish it, I would revisit it when we got home because I did not want to carry a book with me. So that's what ended up happening. I didn't finish it before we left. In fact, I realized that I was not going to make a lot of progress in it before we left on Saturday last week, or Friday last week. So I ended up just just pausing where I had left off last week and picked it up once we got home and finished it. And now this is a book that is very critically praised by the New York Times Book Review. It was on the long list for the Booker Prize. It did not make it onto the short list. It feels like it has been a bit of a cilantro book. Along with Orbital, I think this and Orbital are probably the most cilantro books. Orbital made it onto the short list for the Booker, but this one didn't. And when I say cilantro, it just means love it or hate it, essentially, because a lot of people sometimes ask. And I actually ended up being sort of in the middle on it. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it, but I didn't love it. I think there are a lot of things that are interesting about this book, but I can already feel it fading from my memory. And I think if you asked me about this book in a year, I might remember the concept, but not much of anything about what happens in the pages. So that's kind of where I'm ending up on this. I think I didn't dislike it, but I didn't really love it. And I don't expect it to be something that I'm really going to remember moving forward. It's not really going to stick out to me. But I fully anticipate that it will be on the New York Times top 10 books of the year because they have been so high on it. And I think it's an interesting book. I think it covers some really interesting topics. I do think the writing is sort of unnecessarily complicated in a lot of places. And when you hear things like the New York Times gush about how the sense of repetition creates a tone of movement that puts you in the boxing match with the characters of the book. I mean, I didn't feel that. I can appreciate that, or maybe that it made them feel that way, but I didn't get that sense. And I do think this was harmed a little bit by that sort of interruption of a few days where I put it down and picked it back up when we got home, because I had a much harder time getting into it when we got back than I had been having before I put it down, before we left. So that was the third book that I finished. Now, since I had that experience with the Eric LaRocca book, I have not picked up another audio. I have not started another audio. So it's been days at this point, and I haven't picked up an audio. I've been kind of lazy about audiobooks this year, and I don't know why that has changed, because usually I'm very 50-50 reading print books and audiobooks, and that has not been the case this year. The amount of print books that I have read has far outdone the amount of audios that I have read. And I don't know why that is, but I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with that, just to say that I have not started another audiobook. And I think I know what my next audio is going to be, but I also don't want to commit myself to that one until I'm actually about to start it, because I'm a mood reader. And who knows, between now and tomorrow morning, maybe I'm going to change my mind about which audiobook I'm in the mood to read right now. So I'm going to give myself a little grace to find out. And my audiobook reading also dips over the weekend. So there's a chance I won't even start an audiobook until Monday. And if I'm not going to start an audiobook until Monday, I definitely don't want to commit now on Friday as I'm filming this. So we'll see what I end up doing on audio. In print, I'm actually kind of stuck because I have Catalina by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. This had been on the long list for the National Book Award for fiction and did not make it onto the short list, but I'm really hyped to read it. And I have it from the library, so I feel like this should be my next book, and I am really interested in it. But I've been looking at my big giant pile of books, and there are one or two from there that are calling my name. So again, I feel like this is the one that it's going to be, but I have some other things calling my name. So maybe either tonight when I'm going to bed and about to start something, or in the morning when we start something, maybe I'll actually make up my mind. But the likelihood is that it will be Catalina, simply because it is a library book and I will have to get it back to the library at some point. So That is what I've been up to this week. Lots of good stuff, everything exciting. I'd love to hear what you've been up to. We have been watching Bake Off. I can't wait to watch the new episode tonight. We have not started the new season of Heartstopper yet, but that will be coming. And I'd love to hear what you've been up to, reading, watching, loving, all of that stuff in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.